Audrey.
And Brittany.
Do you remember any of these popular names of books or movies that filled your childhood? We will go over some of them later.
Meet Roald Dahl. He was born in 1916 in Wales to Norwegian parents. After retiring as a fighter pilot, he wrote short stories for a couple of newspapers, as well as adult stories. His first book published was an adult series, Someone Like You, in 1953. It's not until 1961 that he starts a career as a children's book author. He ended up completing 19 children's stories overall. In 1990, he dies at the age of 74, but his work continues to be published, adapted into visual arts, and cherished by adults and children alike. This year happens to mark Roald's 100th birthday, and his work is still flourishing. Roald Dahl Day, for those of you interested, takes place in the month of September, right around his birthday. Check out his website for more information.
In 1920, when Dahl was 4 years old, his 7-year-old sister died from appendicitis. Weeks later, his father died from pneumonia. He studied in various different boarding schools throughout Britain, facing disciplinary troubles until he finally settled at Repton, a private school with a reputation for academic excellence, where he graduated. In 1939, he joined the Royal Air Force and fought as a fighter pilot in World War II, where then he faced spinal, skull, and hip injuries after a plane crash. This prompted him to retire in Britain, where he began his life as a writer.
Roald Dahl's work include James the Giant Peach, published in 1961, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in 1964, Fantastic Mr. Fox in 1970, The BFG, 1982, The Witches, 1983, and Matilda, 1988. Some of his other works, Someone Like You in 1953, and Kiss Kiss in 1959. This, of course, is not all of his works. He did so many other things, but these are his most well-known. The inspiration for his books came from telling bedtime stories to his children, as well as personal experiences. This quote really resonates with his writing style. Children are highly critical, and they lose interest so quickly. You have to keep things ticking along. And if you think a child is getting bored, you must think of something that jolts it back, something that tickles. You have to know what children like.
The mind behind all of Roald Dahl's very memorable watercolor characters and illustrations is Sir Quentin Blake, who has illustrated over 300 books for various different authors, including his own, as well as public spaces and children's hospital rooms.
For next week, we'll be talking about a few of his most famous novels that you will be engaging with during class. We'll go over them in detail.
First is James and the Giant Peach. In 1959, Dahl started writing James and the Giant Peach after strong encouragement from his own agent. This was Dahl's first conscious attempt to write for a younger audience after several years of writing primarily adult stories. In the orchard at Roald's home, there was a cherry tree. Seeing this tree made him wonder, what if one day one of those cherries just kept on and on, growing bigger and bigger? From giant cherries, Roald also considered ever-increasing pears and even apples, but eventually settled on a giant peach as the method for James's magical journey.
Dahl began working on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in 1961, shortly after finishing James and the Giant Peach, but its origins can be traced all the way back to Roald's own childhood. While in school at Repton, he and his peers were taste testers for a chocolate company, something that seems to have started him thinking about chocolate factories and their inventing rooms long before Mr. Wonka was a character. This is one of his most well-known stories. Since celebrating its 50th anniversary in 2014, it has been adapted into 2 major motion pictures, as well as musicals and dramas throughout the world.
While living in a village in Buckinghamshire, Dahl's personal favorite story, Fantastic Mr. Fox, emerged from his love of the British countryside and from stories that he told his own children. A local tree known as the Witch's Tree inspired the home of Mr. Fox, where he would tell his children a fox family really lived. Wes Anderson's critically acclaimed stop-action film adapted scenes from the former home that inspired the story.
The BFG, or The Big Friendly Giant, was written in 1982. The idea of a giant who captured dreams and kept them in bottles for children to enjoy while they were asleep was one Roald had been thinking about for some time. He mentions the BFG in a previous book, Danny, the Champion of the World, and used it as a story for his own children. Dahl himself would climb onto a ladder outside his girl's bedroom and pretend to blow good dreams into their window at night.
Unlike the previous works mentioned, this story, Matilda, didn't come from a personal experience or story he told his children, although, like Matilda, Dahl did have trouble behaving in schools. It was a book that Dahl had great difficulty in writing. He exclaims, "I had an awful trouble with it. I got it wrong. The main character, the little girl, kept changing." The published book went on to enjoy great success, however, and shortly after its release, it was to win that year's Children's Book Award, and has since then also been adapted into many different productions.
In class this coming week, immerse yourself in the world of Dahl. Think about an imaginary friend that you may have had or thought about during your childhood. Try and imagine what kind of life or daily activities that your character would do. We may be having a fun activity involving the world of Dahl and your imaginary characters. To make the class run as smoothly as possible, come prepared with a short character description, not to be graded, just to form your ideas. This may include what they look like, how they speak, where they live, and even how they act. This is supposed to be a fun and engaging activity for you, so make what you will out of it.
Also next week, we'll be having a really short quiz on the information in this video, so make sure you pay attention. And we'll see you then. And remember, if you have good thoughts, they will shine out of your face like sunbeams, and you will always look lovely.